Hello and welcome to this video on Bach's Sonata for Flute and Harpsichord in B minor. Today we'll look at a typical progression of the Baroque time that Bach uses at the very beginning of this piece. Let's look at the first 5 notes of the bass. The bass builds a circular form by starting and ending on the root of the tonality, the B. In other words, the bass ascends stepwise, starting on the first melodic degree, passing the second and third degree, then it jumps to the leading note, here marked as the raised 7th degree. The tension of the leading note is released when returning to the root note, and like that the cycle ends. By listening to the 5 notes, we notice an increasing tension with its climax at the leap of the 3rd degree down to the 7th degree, a leap that forms a very tense melodic interval of a diminished 4th. Let's now try to find an easy harmonization for this bass. Transferring the cyclic structure of the bass line to the harmony, it is natural that we start and end at the root position of our tonic, which is B minor. The C sharp can be harmonized with a dominant chord that goes to a tonical 6th chord on the D. Finally, the leading note belongs naturally to the dominant chord. Like that, the harmonization of these 5 notes alter between tonic and dominant chords. Let's think a little more about this harmonization. As you noticed, we were putting these 4 different chords in 2 categories, tonic and dominant. They appear in different so-called positions, which means that different chord notes appear in the bass. The root of these chords stay the same though. This way of thinking was not at all common in the time of Bach. In the Baroque era, and actually also later, the harmony was built upon the bass. The bass note was therefore the more important note of reference than the root of the chord. Thinking like that, the structure of the chord means its interval to the bass gets at least the same level of importance as the fact that it's a dominant, a tonic, or any other chord. Here is what is meant by that. A root position chord consists of the intervals of a 3rd and a 5th to the bass, whereas the first inversion consists of a 3rd and a 6th. So, these 2 chords consist of different types of intervals. The first one has the perfect interval of a 5th, it's a perfect chord, whereas the other one consists of only imperfect intervals, it's therefore an imperfect chord. Naturally, perfect chords seems much more stable than imperfect chords. Imperfect chords can therefore not at all end a piece. On the other hand, too many perfect chords in the middle of a phrase seems very strong and sometimes even a bit clunky. As mentioned earlier, this bass forms a cyclic structure. We can transfer this idea by starting and ending with perfect chords and filling up the middle with imperfect 6th chords. The result is almost the same harmonization. Only the way we got there is a little bit more the way a Baroque composer might have thought. Who knows? As we now have a harmonization for these bass notes, we are actually not very far from the Bach version. But let's look once more at the 4-part model. Because of its shortness, Bach repeats it directly. The middle voice on F sharp that can be kept all the way through can be seen as a filling voice. A voice that, because of its monotony, normally doesn't have much melodic potential, but it's very useful to fill the harmony in order to sound richer. Completely ignoring this normal function of a filling voice, Bach uses this lying note as the melody of the flute. In order to make this long note melodically more interesting, there are several possibilities. First, we can change the rhythm to syncopations and add an upbeat. Now the flute voice attracts the attention of the listener. For the ending cadence, Bach uses a stepwise falling melodic movement, a melodic phrase ending called tenor clausula, finally arriving the 1st degree of B minor. To complete the melody, Bach adds some more ornaments just a few turning notes that embellish the lying note as well as the tenor clausula in the end. In the harpsichord, we now just have the 3-part harmonization left. By breaking the chords rhythmically, we already find a very typical harpsichord style of accompanying. To make this mechanical accompaniment a bit more fluid, Bach breaks every second chord the other way. Like that, he brings much more delightful sound to the harpsichord. In this video, we have only analyzed the first bars of this sonata very detailed. We see how easily one simple bass can be transformed in a complex and unique way. The principle of using pre-existing models is a very typical composition technique of the Baroque era. The difficult part is still to achieve a big overall structure for the piece. Of course, Bach was not the only composer to use this model. At the end, let's listen to the beginning of this piece and see you in the next video.